I never expected to find myself in the situation I'm in now. A mother's love for her child is supposed to be unconditional, something that holds steady through life's trials. And for many years, I believed that was enough. I believed that giving, supporting, and sacrificing for my son would be reciprocated with love and respect. I believed that family ties, the ones that were forged over years of nurturing and care, could never truly be broken. That belief was shattered the day my son and his wife tried to evict me from my own home. But before I tell you about that, let me start from the beginning. After my husband passed away, it was just me and my son, Alex. He was my pride and joy, the one constant in my life that kept me moving forward through the grief. As a single mother, I worked hard to give him a good life, ensuring he had opportunities that I never did, from school activities to college tuition. I provided for him in every way I could, even if it meant sacrificing my own comfort and stability. When Alex married his wife, Stephanie, I was happy for him. He had found someone to share his life with, and I thought that our family was expanding in a positive way. Stephanie was pleasant enough at first, and although we weren't incredibly close, I assumed that with time, we'd develop a bond. It wasn't long after their wedding that Alex and Stephanie faced financial difficulties. They couldn't afford the mortgage on their house, and they were struggling to keep up with the bills. As a mother, I couldn't stand to see my son go through such hardship. So, I did what I thought any caring parent would do. I offered them a place to stay. I had a fully finished basement in my house, spacious enough for the two of them to live comfortably while they got back on their feet. It wasn't ideal for them, of course, but it was better than them facing financial ruin. They were grateful at the time, or at least they pretended to be. They moved in, and I thought I was helping my family when they needed me most. The first few months went smoothly enough. Alex and Stephanie kept to themselves mostly, living their lives in the basement while I continued with mine upstairs. Occasionally, we would share meals together, but they seemed to prefer their own space, and I respected that. I was glad to help them, and I thought everything was going as well as it could. But as time passed, little things started to change. It was small at first, comments here and there from Stephanie, who started to make subtle remarks about how old-fashioned my home was or how outdated my furniture looked. I brushed it off, assuming she was just getting used to living in a different environment. I wasn't the type to redecorate often, and my house, though modest, was well-kept and comfortable. But I started to feel like she was looking down on me, like I wasn't sophisticated enough for her tastes. Still, I ignored it. I thought it was just part of adjusting to living under someone else's roof, even though I had gone out of my way to make sure they had as much independence and privacy as possible. But I started noticing that whenever I went downstairs to check on them or bring them something, they seemed annoyed, as though my presence was an intrusion. The warmth I had once felt from Alex began to cool, and Stephanie's attitude toward me became increasingly dismissive. I tried to stay positive. I reminded myself that they were under stress, dealing with financial problems, and I told myself that things would improve once they were back on their feet. But as time passed, that hope began to fade. About a year after they moved in, I started planning for my retirement. I had worked hard all my life and had managed to save up enough to comfortably retire. I was excited about the prospect of finally being able to relax, travel a bit, and enjoy the time I had left. I had dreams of visiting places I'd always wanted to see and maybe even pursuing some hobbies that I had neglected over the years. When I brought up my retirement plans with Alex, I expected him to be happy for me. After all, I've been looking forward to this for a long time, but his reaction surprised me. Instead of congratulating me or showing any kind of enthusiasm, he seemed cold, indifferent, almost. He made a vague comment about how I should be careful with my money and not make any rash decisions. I didn't think much of it at the time, but in hindsight, that was the first real sign that something was wrong. As the weeks went by, I noticed that Alex and Stephanie became more distant. They stopped coming upstairs altogether, and I rarely saw them except when they left the house. It was as if they were avoiding me. I couldn't understand why. I had given them everything they needed, and I thought we were still on good terms. But there was a shift in the air, something unspoken that hung between us. I tried to ask Alex if everything was okay, but he brushed me off, saying that they were just busy. But I knew something was wrong. There was a tension building, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer welcome in my own home. One evening, after returning from a visit with some friends, I came home to find a letter on the kitchen table. It was from Alex and Stephanie. The letter was short, blunt, and to the point. In it, they informed me that they had been discussing their future, and they believed it was time for them to take over the house. They felt that since they had been living there for over a year, they should have a say in how things were run. They also mentioned that I should consider downsizing now that I was planning to retire. suggesting that it would be better for everyone if I moved out and let them take full ownership of the home. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My own son and his wife were trying to evict me from my house. The house I had worked my whole life to pay off. The house that held every memory of my late husband. The house I had so generously opened up to them when they were in need. They didn't even have the decency to talk to me face to face. They had written it all out in a cold, impersonal letter as though they were kicking out a tenant, not a mother who had provided for them every step of the way. My hands shook as I reread the letter, trying to make sense of it all. How could they do this to me? How could Alex, my own flesh and blood, betray me in this way? I had sacrificed so much for him. My time, my energy, my finances. And this was how he repaid me? By trying to steal my home? But it got worse. The next day, when I confronted Alex about the letter, he didn't deny it. In fact, he doubled down. He told me that I was being selfish for holding onto the house when I didn't need it anymore. He said that I should be grateful that they were willing to take care of it for me in my old age. And then, with a sneer that I had never seen on his face before, he called me a useless hack. The words hit me like a physical blow. This was my son, the boy I had raised, the boy I had loved more than anything in the world. And he had just insulted me in the most cruel and heartless way possible. I couldn't even respond. I was too shocked, too hurt to say anything. I just stood there, staring at him, wondering how the sweet little boy I had once known had turned into this cold, unfeeling man. The days that followed were some of the darkest of my life. I couldn't believe that my own son, the person I had devoted my life to, was capable of such cruelty. It wasn't just the attempt to take my house. It was the total lack of respect, the disregard for everything I had done for him. I felt betrayed in the deepest way possible. Alex and Stephanie continued to live in the basement, acting as if nothing had happened. They didn't apologize. They didn't try to make amends. They simply carried on with their lives, as though their actions were justified. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let them take my house. This was my home, the place where I had built my life, where I had raised my son, where I had shared memories with my late husband. I wasn't going to let them push me out of it. I contacted a lawyer and began the process of legally removing them from my home. It was a painful and drawn-out battle, but I knew I had no other choice. Alex and Stephanie were furious when they found out, but I didn't care. I couldn't let their selfishness destroy everything I had worked for. Conclusion: moving forward eventually, I was able to evict them. It wasn't easy, and the emotional toll it took on me was immense. I had to come to terms with the fact that my relationship with my son might never be the same again. He had shown me a side of himself that I never knew existed, and it broke my heart. I still don't fully understand why they did what they did. Maybe it was greed, maybe it was entitlement, or maybe they just never appreciated the sacrifices I had made for them. But one thing is clear: I'm better off without them in my home. Now, I live alone in the house that I love. It's quieter than it used to be, but it's mine. I've learned to value my own independence, my own strength, and as I move forward into retirement, I know that I will no longer allow anyone to take advantage of me, no matter who they are. It's a painful lesson, but one that I've learned well. Sometimes, even those you love the most can betray you in ways you never imagined.